In the wild heart of Australia, where predators roam and the line between life and death blurs, one man danced with danger daily and somehow always made it out alive. Until one day he didn't. With his khaki shorts and infectious enthusiasm, Steve Irwin transformed how millions viewed the animal kingdom. But behind the catchphrases and daring encounters was a profound mission that would outlive the man himself. Today on Animal Quest, we'll uncover everything about the extraordinary life and legacy of Steve Irwin the Crocodile Hunter. What drove this seemingly fearless man to risk his life daily among the world's deadliest predators? And was his tragic end truly the accident it appeared to be? Stay with us as we reveal the untold story behind that khaki-clad legend who forever changed how the world sees wildlife. Long before he became an international sensation, Stephen Robert Irwin was just a boy with an unusual passion. Born on February 22, 1962 in Essendon, Victoria, Australia, Steve was immersed in the world of reptiles and wildlife from his earliest days. His parents, Bob and Lynn Irwin, were wildlife enthusiasts who founded the Beerwah Reptile Park in 1970, which would later become the world-famous Australia Zoo. Young Steve received an unusual gift for his 6th birthday, a 12-foot scrub python. By age 9, he was already handling crocodiles under his father's watchful eye. While other children were playing with toys, young Steve was learning to read the body language of some of the planet's most dangerous predators, a skill that would one day save his life numerous times until it couldn't. Growing up in the Australian bush, Steve developed an intuitive understanding of animals that few could match. He became one with nature, and those formative years spent helping crocodiles shaped him into the conservationist he would become. His father joined the East Coast Crocodile Management Program, which focused on relocating crocodiles that ventured too close to human populations rather than killing them. This conservation-minded approach deeply influenced Steve, who would later join the program himself. The conflict between crocodiles and humans was something the Irwins believed they could help mitigate. Together, they worked to remove crocodiles from populated areas before conflicts arose, preventing potential danger while protecting the animals. As a young man, Steve would spend long periods alone in the Australian wilderness, acclimating to the environment and developing a deeper understanding of crocodiles. These solitary expeditions helped him form the connection with nature that would define his life's work. These wilderness years were formative, but they came with constant danger. One wrong move around a territorial crocodile could mean instant death. Yet Steve thrived in this environment, developing an almost supernatural ability to predict animal behavior that would later astonish viewers worldwide and make his eventual fate all the more shocking. In 1991, a chance encounter would change the course of Steve's life forever. An American tourist named Terry Raines visited the family's wildlife park during a vacation in Australia. What she witnessed wasn't just a man handling dangerous reptiles, it was someone with a profound respect for all living creatures and a mission to protect them. Terry, a naturalist from Eugene, Oregon, was immediately captivated not just by Steve's charisma, but by his genuine passion for wildlife conservation. Their connection was immediate and powerful. Within months, they were married, and instead of a traditional honeymoon, they spent their time trapping crocodiles together. Little did they know this unusual beginning would lead to a partnership that would revolutionize wildlife conservation and eventually face its greatest test in tragedy. Their shared passion for conservation created a formidable team. Terry brought business acumen and organizational skills that complemented Steve's hands-on approach and encyclopedic knowledge of wildlife. Together, they would transform the small family reptile park into an internationally recognized conservation center. The early years of their marriage were spent balancing the demands of running the wildlife park with their conservation work. They lived in a small apartment on the zoo grounds, pouring every dollar they earned back into expanding their facilities and improving animal care. During this period, Steve continued his work with the East Coast Crocodile Management Program, often bringing Terry along on dangerous crocodile relocations. These experiences strengthened their bond and deepened their commitment to protecting Australia's wildlife. Steve's journey to international recognition began almost by accident. Film producer John Stainton sought out the Irwin's Reptile Park for animals to use in commercials. Their professional relationship took a significant turn in 1990 when John needed someone to perform a dangerous stunt with a crocodile for a beer commercial. The commercial required someone to snatch a beer can from a crocodile's jaws, a dangerous stunt that Steve volunteered to perform himself. This marked the beginning of a friendship that would eventually launch Steve into the global spotlight. Recognizing Steve's natural charisma and knowledge, Bob Irwin gifted his son a video camera. Steve began documenting his wildlife adventures, often speaking to the camera as if hosting a television show. He had a natural way about him from the beginning, running with the camera and treating it like a companion on his adventures. Steve compiled his footage and gave it to John to review. John was amazed by what he saw. It was unlike anything else on television at the time. The raw enthusiasm, genuine knowledge, and fearless approach to wildlife made for compelling viewing. This led to the creation of The Crocodile Hunter, which debuted on Australian television before being picked up by the Discovery Channel's new network Animal Planet in 1996. At the time, Animal Planet had just 200,000 subscribers. After Steve's series aired, that number exploded to over 7 million, and by 2002, it had reached 76 million. The network executives would later acknowledge that the majority of those subscribers were there because of The Crocodile Hunter. But as Steve's fame grew, so did the risks he took. Each episode pushed boundaries further, bringing him closer to creatures that could end his life in seconds. Was he tempting fate, or was he simply fearless in pursuit of his mission? The show's format evolved from documenting crocodile relocations and daily life at the Australia Zoo to exploring animal habitats around the world. In these diverse environments, Steve would track down the most dangerous and venomous animals, bringing viewers face to face with creatures they might otherwise never see. While many viewers were drawn to Steve's energetic personality and daring animal encounters, his true mission was always conservation. The money he earned from his television success went directly back into wildlife protection efforts. "I want to save the world," Steve often declared. "Money's great, I can't get enough money. And you know what I'm gonna do with it? I'm gonna buy wilderness areas with it. Every single cent I get goes straight into conservation." True to his word, Steve poured every dollar of his growing fame into saving wildlife. He purchased hundreds of thousands of acres in Queensland for conservation and founded Wildlife Warriors Worldwide with Terry in 2002, an organization that would eventually operate on 4 continents. But as his public profile soared, Steve was fighting a shadow war most viewers never glimpsed, against poachers, habitat destruction, and powerful interests who saw apex predators as nothing more than commodities to be harvested. The Australia Zoo expanded dramatically under his guidance with a $40 million investment, creating a world-class facility including a wildlife hospital. After Bindi's birth in 1998, his mission took on a new urgency. He was no longer just saving animals, he was saving them for future generations. Steve's fiercest battles centered on apex predators like crocodiles, which had nearly vanished in the 1970s due to skin hunting. When he discovered companies farming tigers for their penises, bears for gallbladders, and crocodiles for skin under the guise of sustainable use, he unleashed a blistering public attack, calling them wildlife Nazis, and drawing fierce backlash from the scientific establishment. His influence reached surprising heights. When the Northern Territory proposed allowing crocodile trophy hunting, Steve's opposition single-handedly derailed the plan. The environment minister admitted, "Yes, he had an influence on my decision," while critics claim the government simply feared a public relations battle with the beloved conservationist. But Steve's unconventional methods sometimes landed him in hot water. In 2004, global outrage erupted when he held 1-month-old Robert while feeding a crocodile. Child welfare authorities investigated, though no charges followed. Steve remained defiant. I would be considered a bad parent if I didn't teach my children to be crocodile savvy. His approach to wildlife filming, chasing animals, and provoking reactions drew criticisms from traditionalists. Yet behind this seemingly chaotic style lay a sophisticated strategy. As Steve explained to scientific writer Sarah Simpson, it excites them, which helps me to educate. If we can get people excited about animals, then by crikey, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to save them. A venom biologist who worked with Steve revealed a telling conversation. Steve acknowledged that people thought he was an absolute idiot, but explained that once he had viewers' attention, he could teach them anything, and they would remember it. Despite his theatrical approach on camera, colleagues described Steve as having an almost supernatural connection with animals. He could read their body language with uncanny precision and was fanatical about minimizing their stress during filming. As 2006 began, there were subtle indications that Steve was contemplating his mortality. In a 2001 interview, he had expressed concern about leaving his daughter Bindi without a father if something were to happen to him. This awareness of risk seemed to intensify as his family grew. In early 2006, John Stainton, Steve's manager and close friend, experienced a troubling premonition. At the beginning of this year, I had a premonition that this was my last year, he later revealed. It was so strong that I made a will for the first time in my life. Though Stainton initially believed the premonition concerned his own death, in retrospect it seemed to foretell Steve's tragic end. Despite his unease, production moved forward on various projects, including Ocean's Deadliest, a documentary for the Discovery Channel. Steve was also dealing with physical challenges. He had suffered a broken neck when a large fence post fell on his head while working on their conservation property. During filming of a crocodile capture and relocation that involved his whole family, he relied heavily on his crew to help him avoid lifting heavy objects due to his neck injury. After that filming session, Steve gave what Stanton later described as a finale speech, thanking his crew for their support during his recovery. "You guys are really good. You went out in front of me and made sure I didn't have to lift anything too heavy. My neck's still giving me grief, but it pales in comparison to the goodness that I've got in my heart from this month." Those words lingered with the crew. There was something unusually heartfelt in Steve's tone, an intensity that felt more like a farewell than a routine thank you. Some exchanged quiet glances but said nothing. At the time, it seemed like just another day, but later they would all remember it as something more. Because only days later everything changed. The team moved forward unaware that the quiet unease hanging in the air was the beginning of the end. September 4th, 2006 started like so many others for Steve Irwin. Underwater camera gear, salt spray in the air, and the thrill of another close encounter ahead. But beneath the surface, something felt off. The sky was overcast, the water unusually murky. The sharks they'd hoped to film were nowhere to be found, as if the ocean itself was warning them to turn back. The main production, Ocean's Deadliest, was paused due to low visibility and poor weather conditions. But Steve hated wasting time. "Let's shoot something for Bindi's show," he suggested. It was a spontaneous decision, the kind that he made often. Only this time, it would change everything. He and cameraman Justin Lyons left the main boat, Croc 1, in a small inflatable motorboat to search for suitable subjects. The water around Bat Reef was shallow and clouded, with chest-high depth in some places and shifting visibility due to stormy conditions earlier in the week. After a brief search, they spotted a large stingray, approximately 8 feet wide, gliding along the sandy seafloor. They followed it briefly by boat, hoping to capture some natural footage. Then both Steve and Justin entered the water, positioning themselves on either side of the ray so it would remain between them. The plan was to film it swimming away from the camera, a shot Steve had done countless times before. Stingrays, members of the cartilaginous fish family closely related to sharks, are generally docile and solitary animals. They often bury themselves in sand to rest and feed on mollusks, crustaceans, and small fish. While they are equipped with one or more venomous barbs on their tails used exclusively for defense, they're rarely aggressive toward humans. Fatal attacks are extraordinarily rare, with fewer than a handful of documented cases worldwide. Steve, with decades of experience handling marine life, likely felt confident around the creature. But what happened next was both shocking and nearly unprecedented. The stingray, perhaps feeling trapped or startled by the proximity of two humans, whipped its muscular tail upward in a sudden defensive reflex. In a matter of seconds, it delivered multiple blows. Its serrated barb, a hardened spine coated in venomous tissue, punctured Steve's chest and pierced his heart. The injuries were catastrophic. Cameraman Justin Lyons later described the motion as hundreds of strikes in a few seconds. Justin followed the ray with his camera as it swam away, not realizing anything was wrong until he panned back to Steve and saw him surrounded by a cloud of blood in the water. Steve surfaced, struggling to speak. "It's punctured me lung," he gasped. But as the blood flowed faster, a chilling silence fell over the boat. Lyons rushed to Steve and kept his head above water. The inflatable boat reached them quickly and crew members pulled him aboard, blood pouring from the wound. "He looked me in the eye and said, 'I'm dying.' That was the last thing he said," Justin recalled. "There was nothing we could do." CPR was performed non-stop as they sped toward shore. A helicopter met them, but it was too late. The stingray's barb had punctured his heart and caused massive internal trauma. Despite the crew's frantic efforts, Steve Irwin was pronounced dead shortly after. News of Steve's death spread rapidly around the world, crashing several news websites as people desperately sought information. That same day, a visibly shaken John Stainton held a press conference to confirm the tragic news and provide details about what had happened. Steve's father, Bob Irwin, found some solace in knowing his son was no longer in pain. Steve knew the risks involved with the type of work he was doing, and he wouldn't have wanted it any other way, Bob said. He certainly did die doing something he loved doing. The Australian Parliament opened the day after Steve's death so that Prime Minister John Howard could offer condolences. Flags on the Sydney Harbour Bridge were lowered to half-mast for 2 days as a mark of respect. Howard offered a state funeral, but the Irwin family declined, believing Steve would have preferred something more intimate. A private funeral was held at Australia Zoo, where Steve's body was buried in an area inaccessible to the public. A public memorial service was also held, aired live around the world, with an estimated 300 million viewers tuning in to pay their respects. The footage of Steve's death, captured by Justin's camera due to Steve's rule to continue filming no matter what, was given to police for their investigation. After reviewing the footage, authorities determined that Steve had not provoked the stingray, confirming that it was indeed a tragic accident. John Stainton, who viewed the footage, was adamant that it would never be released publicly. Terry Irwin chose never to watch it, making a conscious decision to follow on celebrating Steve's life rather than dwelling on the moment of his death. In a disturbing twist that would have horrified Steve, some misguided individuals took revenge on stingrays in the days following his death. At least 10 stingrays were found dead and mutilated on Queensland beaches, some of them with their tails cut off. Steve's conservation organization quickly condemned these acts. "We are disgusted and disappointed that people would take such actions against these animals," a spokesperson stated. "This is the last thing Steve would have wanted." In the days following Steve's death, something remarkable happened. As the world mourned, Terry and 8-year-old Bindi stepped forward with an unexpected message. "Don't blame the stingrays. I encourage people to not fear or hate rays," Terry told reporters as news broke of stingrays being found mutilated on Queensland beaches. "This accident was just extraordinarily unique." Bindi, showing wisdom beyond her years, added, "I don't honestly have any bitterness towards stingrays. They're really beautiful animals. Dad loved them." This moment revealed everything about the Irwin family's commitment to Steve's mission. Even in their darkest hour, conservation came first. Suddenly a widow at 42 with 2 young children, Terry faced an impossible choice: retreat from public life or continue Steve's work. She chose the latter, refusing lucrative offers to sell Australia Zoo despite the enormous financial challenges ahead. I think Steve's major achievements were giving people the inspiration to know that one person can make a huge difference, Terry reflected. Now we have to hang in there and keep it going. What happened next would astonish even Steve's most devoted fans. Under Terry's leadership, Australia Zoo not only survived, it thrived. In 2015, she purchased 33,000 additional acres for conservation, creating a vast wildlife corridor exactly as Steve had dreamed. The Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital, meanwhile, has treated over 90,000 animals, becoming one of the world's busiest wildlife hospitals. But the most extraordinary part of Steve's legacy wasn't the land or the facilities, it was his children. At her father's memorial service, 8-year-old Bindi delivered a speech that moved millions to tears. "I don't want Daddy's passion to ever end. I want to help endangered wildlife just like he did." She kept that promise. From hosting Bindi the Jungle Girl to winning Dancing with the Stars in 2015, Bindi used every platform to promote wildlife conservation. Robert, though just 2 when his father died, developed into a remarkable wildlife photographer and television personality whose appearances on The Tonight Show channel Steve's infectious enthusiasm. In 2018, the family received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Steve's honor. Standing together, they embodied his ultimate dream, a family united in the mission to protect wildlife. But perhaps the most powerful symbol of Steve's enduring legacy arrived in 2021, when Bindi and her husband Chandler welcomed daughter Grace Warrior Irwin Powell. A new generation of wildlife warriors began. Though Grace never met her grandfather, Bindi says she calls him Grandpa Crocodile and has already learned his famous phrases. "Grace is so sweet because she reminds me so much of Dad," Bindi shared. "She's just all in with everything. She's fiery and fabulous." Photos of Grace at the zoo interacting with wildlife under careful supervision evoke powerful memories of young Bindi with her father. A circle completed, a legacy secured. But the Irwin impact extends far beyond their family. Wildlife Warriors, the conservation organization Steve and Terry founded in 2002, now operates globally, supporting projects from tiger conservation in Sumatra to elephant sanctuaries in India. Their approach embodies Steve's vision, protecting not just individual animals but entire ecosystems. The scientific community, too, recognizes Steve's contributions beyond his public persona. His discovery of a new turtle species, later named Elsia Irwin in his honor, his revolutionary crocodile tracking methods, and his detailed behavioral observations have provided valuable data that continues to inform conservation efforts worldwide. As we look to the future, the Irwin legacy shows no signs of fading. The Crocodile Hunter Lodge, opened in 2022, fulfills Steve's dream of immersing visitors in wildlife conservation. Robert continues to develop as a wildlife photographer and television host, and little Grace Warrior represents the next generation of a family dedicated to changing how the world sees and protects wildlife. Nearly 2 decades after his passing, Steve Irwin's influence remains profound. His catchphrases have entered the global lexicon. His conservation methods have been adopted worldwide, and his family continues his mission with unwavering dedication. As Terry once explained, Steve always said he didn't care if people remembered him as long as they remembered his message. That message, that one person can make a difference in protecting our planet's precious wildlife, has never been more relevant. Through the Irwin family's ongoing work, the wildlife warrior spirit lives on, inspiring millions to care for the creatures with whom we share this earth. Crikey, what a legacy!